Joining me is Rowan Dean, Editor-in-Chief of The Spectator Australia and host of Outsiders on Sky News every Sunday at 9 a.m. Rowan, what is going on here?
Well, Andrew, it's terrific, and thank you for taking us through all that detail. The bottom line here is yet again the ABC, Paul Barry, hang their heads in shame. What we see always is two things, and this Paul Barry Media Watch segment showed them beautifully. The two things that always the left default to. One is this kind of moral equivalence, where they can only ever talk about Jews being persecuted or anti-Semitism or attacks on Jews or anything with this kind of weird moral equivalence. You've got A team and B team, or the blue team and, you know, whatever team, and they're both kind of the same. They're doing it to each other. So that kind of excuses anti-Semitic hatred, violence, and so on. And the other game, which the left play all the time and anti-Semites play all the time, and Barry played this card as well, was to say, well, not enough Jews died, so nobody actually died in this. So what are we worried about? How can you call it a pogrom? I'm paraphrasing him, I'm quoting from memory, but he said something along the lines of, how could you call it a pogrom when nobody died? Because the definition of a pogrom is a massacre. Let's just get back to basics. And as for that word provocation, that is so sinister by itself. Let me remind you that we had on October 9th in Sydney mobs going around the Opera House screaming out, "Gas the Jews," and that was the allegation, and the New South Wales police said, "Oh, no. They weren't saying gas the Jews. They were just saying, where's the Jews?" So where's the Jews is a kind of harmless thing. Well, we've seen here in Amsterdam what where's the Jews looks like. It looks like a guy being kicked on the ground. It looks like some character ending up in the canal. It looks like people running for their lives in fear or grabbing pipes to defend themselves, which is what the vlogger said. It was an act of self-defense. So always, the big story the left want to deny and play down is the real story here, Andrew, is that this is Amsterdam. Amsterdam, where a young teenage girl hid in fear for her life during the Second World War, hid for months, years on end in a cupboard, terrified out of her wits because she was Jewish and she was being hunted. And she was being hunted down to be killed. And she wrote a diary about the sheer terror and inhumanity of that situation. And here we are all these years later in Amsterdam with people being hunted down because they are Jewish and with very serious intent to cause harm to them. That's the real story. It is despicable. The Prime Minister of Holland recognized this fact and spoke about it accordingly. And the right-thinking world recognized the sheer horror that in Amsterdam, where Anne Frank hid, yet again, angry mobs are hunting and threatening to kill Jews. That's the true story. That's the only story. And to try and obfuscate and dissemble the story and say, well, this person filmed that and over here was this and Sky News, blah, 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 blah. And well done to Shari and yourself and Erin for bringing that story so forcefully to the forefront of viewers' minds, because it was a horror show. And fortunately, nobody died. But the vile suggestion that, oh, it can't be a pogrom because nobody died. I mean, that is really sinister.
Yeah, but also the provocation. I mean, for example, pulling out the sticks to protect themselves. It seems to me that the logic is that had these Jews not fought back, and a number we're told might have been, have served in the IDF, in the Israeli army, so they knew how to protect themselves. If they had not protected themselves, if they had let themselves just be bashed, that would have been okay. That would have been okay. And also notice, in that entire report by Paul Barry, all the attention was on what the Jews did wrong. There was nothing from him about what their persecutors had done wrong. I think that says a lot. And I want to know why it is, who in the ABC is going to call out Paul Barry when this man was appointed the ABC's on-screen media policeman. Well, who's going to call him out on air?
Exactly. And if you want a provocation, Andrew, if we're going to play the provocations game, let me just remind viewers that the horrors of October 7th. That was provocation. That was genuine provocation. Tearing down a flag, I'm sorry, doesn't count in my book.
Oh, look, what mob of football hooligans hasn't done a lot of what Paul Barry says is provocation, but you don't see people getting hunted down the street. Rowan, the global warming craziness, right, it's now going to be seriously tackled by Donald Trump and his team. Yeah, we've just had Energy Minister Mr Bowen at the UN Climate Conference in Azerbaijan just hand over another $50 million for Pacific Islands in particular to give, for supposed climate action. You know, I don't think we've got the right Chris as our energy minister when Trump has got this Chris Wright who's calling out this scaremongering.
Absolutely. And everything we are doing, the Albanese government is doing, is deliberately flying in the face of the Trump administration and the amazing team that Trump has put together, which is going to change our world. It is, as I said the other day, it's a renaissance of the West. The COP29 is literally a gathering, a fringe comedy festival. You have Chris Bowen wandering around saying that we're not going to go nuclear because it's sunnier in Melbourne than London, something actually I dispute, having been in both cities. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the idea that we are threatening our alliance with America and Britain, our nuclear arrangement, obviously AUKUS is a nuclear agreement. It's built around the nuclear subs, and it's built around the promise of us having nuclear submarines, the ultimate deterrence against China. And yet here we have, oh, no, we're not going to have nuclear, says Chris Bowen, because it's sunnier in Melbourne. Fantastic defence strategy. I'm not sure what Richard Marles is making of all this, but at the same time, when Chris Bowen, when people at COP29 are shaking their heads and raising an eyebrow to Chris Bowen, we know we're really in trouble. At that point.
Honestly, you're just talking there, Rowan. So his argument against nuclear power is that we've actually got more wind here. In that case, isn't the argument against nuclear submarines that we should have a submarine with a sail on it instead? Maybe that was the go. Why are we going nuclear with submarines then? Rowan Dean, it's madness, and I hope Australians are going to see through that come the election time. Thank you so much for your time.